The Detroit Pistons are the worst team in the NBA. They just went the entire month of November without winning a single basketball game. That's 17 straight losses now, after they dropped 23 of their final 25 games to end last season. Perhaps the old adage is true, and you really can't have shit in Detroit. But at the center of all this ugliness and despair sits Cade Cunningham, the first overall pick in the 2021 draft, and the prince who was promised to save a suffering franchise. A lot of people expected Cade, who missed almost the entirety of last season due to injury, to return and take a massive leap into undeniable stardom this year, carrying the Pistons out of the cellar. But as of today, he leads the league in total turnovers and has been one of the least efficient volume scorers in the league. But is that really his fault? Is Cade truly a disappointment left in the dust by his peers? Or is he just the poor frontman bearing the blame as he's living in a genuine basketball nightmare? It's an interesting conversation, but signs certainly point more to the latter. Detroit is a spacing hellscape. They rank second to last in the league in three-pointers made and have been a third percentile spot-up team. With Bojan Bogdanovic, the team's second best offensive player, out for the entire season until their most recent game, Cade had spent most of the year starting alongside basically three non-shooters: Killian Hayes, Ausar Thompson, and Jalen Duren. Detroit is also starved for shot creation alongside Cade. Guys who can break defenses down off the dribble or knock down pull-up jumpers. Hayes is a limited athlete and poor shooter. Ausar is too raw to create in the half court right now. And the other two regular starters have been bigs. So, especially before Bojan's return, you've been looking at probably the worst team in the league in both shot making and shot creation alongside Cade. So what's the result of this? Well, Cade has about as large an offensive burden as any player in the league, running the third most pick and rolls per game, and is doing so in a situation where defenses can aggressively key in on him since the rest of the lineup is so limited offensively. A lot of possessions look like this. Cade drives and all five defenders are in the paint because who's holding them accountable? Bagley and Ausar are only effective around the rim. Killian's a very poor shooter who Cade couldn't even get the ball out to through all this traffic, and Isaiah Stewart's totally out of his eye line. So there is nothing here, and he probably still does the right thing here, getting Capella off his feet and getting this shot at least up on the rim, so Bagley has a very good chance at a putback. Here's another drive with four defenders in the paint. Cade spins off his man into immediate help, which also would have been there if he just drove right, because what is this spacing? So again, despite all the attention he's drawing, there's no real passing angles for Cade to attack, and he again resorts to using a pump fake to create at least a decent look. So that inevitable poor spacing and lack of offensive skill around Cade makes it really easy for defenses to help on him without getting punished. Now, sometimes Cade can find a way to create a good shot even in these scenarios. Here, he does a great job of keeping his dribble alive and working to find the angle to draw help and make this dump off. Here, you see more poor spacing on the strong side, and Duren's defender helps aggressively, but Cade finds the angle to wrap around here anyways and make a great pass. Cade playmakes pretty well in these tough situations, and he can often weaponize the defensive attention he receives as by far the team's best offensive player without having to deal with insanely congested paints. When bigs hedge, he's quite good at using his size and floating passes over the defense to hit his big man. This is beautiful deception, keeping his eyes on Killian Hayes to move Brunson up to the wing and then lofting this to Duren, who still misses unfortunately. Cade generally has quite good feel with his bigs out of pick and roll, and he loves throwing up lobs for them too, and I like the calm pace he plays within those situations, trapping his defender on his back to create an advantage. Against a hedging scheme, Cade can easily hit the player on the wing when that guy's defender slides over to the roller, but unfortunately his teammates will still miss there more often than not if they take the look at all. And sometimes you can really just laugh at what Cade's working with here. A defensive miscommunication sends two defenders his way, and he hits Duren to attack a painfully obvious 3-on-2, but instead, an oblivious Duren just resets the offense. Creating an advantage is one thing, but you still need your teammates to capitalize on them. Despite the fact that he ranks 8th in assists per game, Cade's teammates tend not to, so defenses will continue to dedicate overwhelming attention to Cade and force anyone else to beat them. But this past game, in which Jaden Ivey started over Ausar for improved spacing and the Pistons got back Bojan for 27 minutes, gave us a window into what Cade looks like in a more normal, modern NBA offense. Here you see they've cleared the side for this pick and roll, and nobody can completely abandon their man for help. Cade forces Allen to step up with this nice little shot fake, and then hits a perfect bounce pass in rhythm to Duren. Here you have some more fair 2-on-2 pick and roll action, and Cade punishes Allen and drop with this beautiful lob. With Bojan out there, Cade now has a skilled big wing he can use as a screener. He rejects the screen here, but draws 2 defenders. Bojan slips out, and that's a legit shot maker who's open. Now in semi-transition, you can't just leave Bojan for a wide open 3 on the wing, so 2 dudes scramble to him, and Cade could have hit Stewart a split second sooner here, but he fits this one-handed live dribble pass into a tight window. Here, neither Niang or Mitchell tag Stewart, since they're both worried about their own shooters. Cade engages Allen as Okoro works to recover to him, and this is another beautiful bounce pass in rhythm. All those assists were in the first quarter of the first game with Bojan back and an improved shooting starting 5. A game that Cade finished with 23 points, 11 assists, just 1 turnover, and a plus 13 plus minus. Turns out, Cade's a pretty good offensive engine when the spacing around him isn't archaic, and I'm quite confident he'll look better the rest of the year with Bojan back. But as abysmal as his situation has been this year, Cade isn't blameless. 4.5 turnovers per game is bad, and part of that is absolutely due to him feeling an overwhelming offensive burden and at times trying to do too much, trying to fit passes into very tight windows, forcing the issue as a ball handler against multiple defenders because who else is going to do anything? But he can also be inaccurate as a passer. His placement on pocket passes is inconsistent and can be too low, causing bigs to fumble the catch, and he doesn't always hit perimeter players right in the shooting pocket. Overall, I'd say Cade is a really good playmaker with great size, good vision and variety as a passer, who has tremendous upside if he can develop elite passing accuracy. Now, when it comes to his poor scoring efficiency, as we've seen with how congested things are, it's very hard for Cade to get a clean look at the rim, which is the most efficient spot on the floor. So with all those packed paints, the shots that are available to him are usually mid-range pull-ups out of pick and roll, where he shoots a solid 41% and is a skilled shot creator. He's got a fluid step back, can trap defenders on his back, and has good size to get those looks off cleanly. And it's important to be comfortable for mid-range, but it's tough to predicate your shot diet on that because it's generally the least efficient shot type. And Detroit's spacing exaggerates his dependence on those tough jumpers, but part of that dependence is also due to Cade's skill set. He has tons of promising skills offensively. He's a 6'6", 220-pound fella who can handle, play, make, and shoot like a lead guard. That's great. But he lacks overwhelming, explosive athleticism. It's rare that he's able to just beat a guy off the bounce one-on-one with his first step, and he can't often get around bigs coming downhill with quickness. Now, he can create advantages in other ways. His handle isn't flawless, but it is versatile. He loves his in-and-out dribble, his behind-the-back move, he splits doubles quite well, and he is strong for a guard, so he can win with physicality at times, but without high-end quickness, his drives can be cut off and force him into some tougher runners. Despite his good size, Cade also isn't the sort of great vertical athlete who can rise up in congested paints and finish anyways, like Ant, or make aerial adjustments to create new passing angles like Ja. He doesn't get great elevation here, and he rarely wins outright one-on-one versus bigs around the rim, which is why I'll often come to a stop and resort to these pump fakes. All these factors, the poor spacing, Cade's issues getting a step on drives, and finishing in traffic, have made him by far the least efficient finisher of any of the league's top 50 shot takers inside 8 feet this season. He's got to get better there. When you think about the great guards around the league, almost all of them are dominant paint scoring forces or phenomenal pull-up three-point shooters. Those are just the 2 most efficient ways to create offense, and Cade isn't either right now. I do like his shot creation from the perimeter, his size is an asset, and he's got a smooth step back, but he's shooting just 30% on pull-up threes and 35% from deep overall. I still think he's a better jump shooter than the numbers indicate because he's got good touch, and the degree of difficulty is so high right now given his situation, but I would definitely hesitate to call him elite there. So Cade's not free of blame here. It's tough for anyone to be when a team is this bad. He may not be built to be a seamless one-man offense, but I still see a big guard who commands the game and play makes well, who can knock down jumpers on and off ball, and who's flashed awesome two-way upside when engaged. He's just been rather inconsistent with his defensive effort this year, understandably given his offensive burden and how discouraging the situation is. But it's tough to overstate how important situation is when we judge a guy at this stage in his development. Jalen Suggs is doing an awesome job filling a role right now and is getting lots of deserved credit for it. but imagine if he was being asked to carry an offense, much less Detroit's. It would not be pretty. The NBA's best offensive players would be grinding to make this an average unit. To expect Cade, with fewer than 100 NBA games under his belt, to singularly save everything and then to rag on him when he doesn't make a miracle happen, that doesn't make sense to me. When I watch Cade, I still see a future all-star. And by the way, I'm not even out on Detroit long-term. Duren and Ausar are both impressive talents, but if you're going to play them together, you need elite shooting on the wings and more perimeter creators than just Cade. But the Pistons this year have mostly started another big and a poor shooter in the backcourt. That's just an abysmal offensive approach. There's no question Detroit is lagging behind the league's most impressive rebuilds, but there are foundational pieces I like, Cade being by far the best. Starting the more offensively inclined Ivy and getting Bojan back are big steps in the right direction to making the Pistons a serious NBA team, and Cade's been trending upwards as of late, dropping 25.5 points and 7.5 assists per game on a solid 57% true shooting clip with just over 3 turnovers a night in his last 6 games. So, Cade's been inefficient as a third-year player in offensive hell, but if I'm dishing out blame pie in Detroit, he's only getting a small slice, and I promise you, things are only going up for him from here.